What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to Grammar by Dan. My name is Dan, and this is one of the first of a couple of videos at least that I'm going to be doing while my foot is broken, which basically just means that I can't do those walk outside videos, which I really enjoy doing. So we're inside now, and today we're learning about full stops. Okay, so when we're talking about full stops, what we're really talking about is these little dots here, like that. Okay, and I just wanted to get out of the way some of the secondary uses of full stops. So we can use a full stop in numbers and letters, which are used as headings. So you know when you are, I don't know, maybe you're making a list, okay, and it's like, okay, number one, it's like number one, I'm going to have to do this, and number two, I have to do this. Well, that you can use a stop during that, just to separate the number from whatever else comes after. You can use a full stop in decimal points, so 3.25, you can use it there. And you can also use it in the sum of money as a decimal point, so $3.25. But this is the one that I really wanted to look at. We use full stops to end full sentences. That's the most common way of using a full stop, in informal writing especially. And that's what I wanted to have a look at in more detail today. So the question we have to consider is, when can you end a sentence with a full stop? And what that question is really asking is, when do you have a full sentence? And the short answer is this. It's actually not so easy. The reason why that's the case is because there are different types of sentences out there. So you can have a simple sentence, which is one independent clause, like independent clause, and I'll explain what that means later. Or you can have a compound sentence, which is two independent clauses, or a complex sentence, which is one independent clause and one dependent clause, or a compound complex sentence, which is two independent clauses and one dependent clause. Now, the main point is this. Not every sentence is so easy to figure out where to put your full stop, right? So you could say, he went to the shop. Now that's an easy one, you just put a full stop at the end of that. But once you start introducing dependent clauses and making more complex sentences, it can sometimes be difficult. But here are some points that you need to look out for. You need, at least, to make a full sentence, an independent clause. So in all of the sentences that we were talking about, the independent clause is kind of the root, right? It stays at the heart of the sentence and really defines what the sentence is trying to say. But how do we define what an independent clause is? So an independent clause is like a full idea, like a whole idea, right? And how do we determine whether we have one? So in an independent clause, there are two elements that are absolutely necessary every single time. It doesn't matter what independent clause you have, these two elements are going to be absolutely necessary. You need a subject and you need a verb. That is to say, when I talk about a subject, you need someone that does an action and an action, right? So we could say the subject is John. This is someone who is capable of doing an action, and the verb can be ran. Okay? So you could say John ran. So once you have a subject and once you have a verb, you know, it might not be an independent clause. It could very well be a dependent clause, but you have to pay attention to the subject and the verb, because if these two elements are together, you could very well have an independent clause. And that could be the start of a full sentence. So I just wanted to give you a bit of a sample of when we should put a full stop after a full sentence. So remember, a full sentence is a sentence that makes sense with all the elements combined. And remember, it always has to rely on at least three elements, that is to say, an independent clause, a subject, and a verb. So I know there's four different types of sentence, but I just got three as a bit of a sample. So we got your simple sentence, which is just one independent clause, so it's just that. a compound sentence which is two independent clauses, and a complex sentence which is one independent clause as well as one dependent clause. So if we look at our simple sentence, we see we have all the elements that we need to make a full sentence. We have a subject, I went is the verb, to the shops is the object. But just remember that once we see the subject and we see the verb, we're on to something here. We know that there might be an independent or a dependent clause. So how do we determine whether this clause is independent or dependent? And simply the way that we do that is we read it and we see whether it just makes sense by itself. So you say, I went to the shops. Is that lacking anything? Is it following on from something? Do you need another clause behind it for it to make sense? And the answer simply is no, you don't. When you say, I went to the shops, that is independent all by itself. So if this is one independent clause and it has your ingredients, your main ingredients, your subject, and your verb, well, what that means is that we have a simple sentence. And that means we can put a full stop here. So this is the kind of method that I would be using if I was figuring out where I should put my full stops. Where does my simple sentence or compound sentence or complex sentence end, right? So look at the compound sentence. Johnny stood up and Mary stood up too. Okay, so remember, compound is two independent clauses, and in each independent clause there needs to be a subject and a verb. So what is our subject and our verb? Johnny did what? He stood, so that's your verb, up. And so there's your conjunction to join this independent clause with this independent clause, and Mary, subject, stood up too. So subject, verb, verb. This, Johnny stood up, is an independent clause. You see that it's not lacking anything? You can just say Johnny stood up and it just makes sense all by itself. It doesn't have to rely on anything. And hopefully when we get to complex sentences, that idea will be made a bit more clear as we look at what a dependent clause looks like. But this is a independent clause too. Mary stood up too. That's an idea that just stands all by itself. So where do we put the full stop when it comes to a compound sentence? Well, we wouldn't put it here, right? Because that's joined to it. The sentence ends right there. So we'll chuck a full stop there. And that's a compound sentence. In a complex sentence, it's one independent clause and one dependent clause. So what is a dependent clause? A dependent clause is a clause, which means that it needs a subject and a verb as well, but it is dependent on the independent clause. So let's have a look at what we have here. You say, the man was hit by the car because it was going very fast. So you say, the man, that's the first subject, was hit. Okay, so he was hit, using a bit of an auxiliary verb there. The man was hit by the car. So this is actually where we could put a full stop if we wanted that. For just a simple sentence, because you see this is the independent clause and it ends right here. The man was hit by the car. It's a full idea, not wanting anything. So that could actually be a simple sentence all by itself, but a complex sentence has a dependent clause too. So this sentence actually goes on. So you say, because it was going very fast. So you say it was going very fast. That's an independent clause as well. You could say it was going very fast, but the moment you introduce something like a subordinate conjunction here, because it was going very fast, this is reliant on that. The dependent clause is reliant on the independent clause. So you say, the man was hit by the car because it was going very fast. But if you just say, because it was going very fast, that is not an idea that can stand by itself, right? You can't just say, because it was going very fast. You have to say, why? Why was going very fast, and you need to describe the it. What was it? What was the it that was going very fast? So when you combine these two together, you have an independent clause up here and a dependent clause down here. So this could be an independent clause if it not were for the subordinating conjunction. So what that means is that we put a full stop here. So that is a sample of where we should put our full stops at the end of our sentences, and I gave you a list of the three main ones: simple, compound, and complex. So I just wanted to give you a bit of a practical example of what I mean in an actual book. So let's have a look at these sentences here. There's about 4. So you say, I put the phone down feeling unreasonably exhilarated, and there is your full stop. So why did she put a full stop there? Because this is a full idea in itself. It's a full sentence. So you say, I, that's subject, put the phone down. So put is the verb, the phone down is the object, feeling unreasonably exhilarated is your adjectival phrase. So that's describing how you were feeling, how the I was feeling. So you say, I looked back at the photograph of Joyce, and that could easily be a simple sentence in itself. So you could easily put a full stop there, but no, it's a comma, and it continues, standing with the others. So standing with the others is another adjectival phrase. It's adding on something to describe this person, Joyce. I looked back at the photograph, so I, subject, looked back, that's your verb. At the photograph of Joyce, that's your object. But Joyce is the one that's being described here, standing with the others. She was, and here's an easy one, she was grinning cheekily. Okay, so she, that's your subject, was grinning, verb, cheekily. Okay, and that is your adverb. So it's describing how she was grinning, and there you can put your full stop. Yes, she would talk to me. Full stop. So you see, that was basically a succession of simple sentences, but you can have different types of sentences. Remember, you can have your complex or your compound sentences, or even your complex compound sentences. So there's a lot of variation. So I'm sorry that that video was so long. I did give a couple of examples that might have been omitted, but I think they were necessary. I thought they were quite helpful. But basically, when you're trying to find out where you should put your full stops, the question you have to figure out is, where does your sentence end, right? And once you can determine where your simple, compound, complex, or compound complex sentence ends, then you're in a good place to put your full stop. So thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you on the next one.